Good morning, church. It's Krista with your 5 minutes from God. I want to share something with you that's been on my heart, in particular the last couple of weeks, but I think it's so important for all of us, and that is how do you share your faith journey with your children and with your grandchildren and with your great grandchildren. When our children were small and at home, we did devotions every night, or we read a story from a children's Bible every night, and we had questions, and we could talk about our faith in those moments. And as they got older, we got more age-appropriate material so we could do stuff at home. So if you have kids at home, I can't encourage you enough to be doing that. Just as a side note, I loved the Bible we had for our kids when they were really small. It had just a very short story and then like 3 questions that you could talk about after. And my daughter recently, she wanted to buy a children's Bible for her baby, and she goes, I don't want any children's Bible. I want that one. She's very nostalgic, and it just blessed my heart to know that she enjoyed that and she wanted that for her son. But I'm in a different phase of life. I don't have kids at home anymore, so I'm thinking about how do I document this for my grandkids and my great grandkids. How do I share what God's done in my life and in the life of our church and in our family and friends around us? And so, I thought about, gosh, we spent a lot of time, years ago making photo albums for vacations, right? Now we do scrapbooks and videos. It is so easy now to do videos. If that is something that you are able to do, I would encourage you to make some videos for your kids, for your grandkids, for generations to come that document some of the things that God is doing in your life. I, however, still love paper and pen, or just typing in my computer. But I would encourage you to write it down. I'm at an age now where if I don't write stuff down, I forget. And it's so easy to forget some of the small things that God does in your life until you're reminded. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can write letters to your kids, to your grandkids. One of the things we do at Medway every Christmas is we write letters to our family, and those are a great way to share God's stories with them, but also as you tell them how much they mean to you. You can, I've heard Mike say that he has bought a new Bible each year, and then went through the 1-year Bible reading plan and made notes in his Bible, and then he can have a Bible for each of his kids that way. That's one way. Journaling is probably the easier way, and most of you are like, I don't journal. That's not me. I actually have tried journaling several times. Here's one of my first stabs at trying to journal. It started in December of 2001. There's like a couple of, I even did them on like silly Post-it notes. And then there's nothing till March, and there's only like six notes in there from March. So, and then I quit. I didn't, but what I wrote in here is actually still very meaningful for me. I'm so glad I wrote those few things down. It would be 16 more years before I would try to journal again. And I went with something very small. So this is just a calendar, a daily planner, not much white space for each day, so that I was not intimidated to write down or not write down in it. And I have different things in there. Sometimes it's like, hey, here's where we went on vacation, or here we went out to the movies with somebody, or here we hiked with this family. Sometimes it's a prayer request that I have in there. I can't encourage you enough to write your prayer requests down, because we forget sometimes how God answers those in time. There's actually a prayer request in my very first journal from 2002 that God didn't answer for a year and a half after, but what an answer it was to that prayer. Sometimes I write special thoughts I have about my daily devotion, and I'll be honest, sometimes there are weeks in there where I have written nothing, but it is something, right? It's not, the entire book's not empty, and I get better at it each year, but what a blessing. And then I can look back over the years and see how God has answered prayer, or how God has moved in certain situations, or things that I forgot about that really blessed me. So, church, I just encourage you today. I'm going to read from Deuteronomy, chapter 11. In the Old Testament, God was constantly telling the Jewish people, talk about me with your kids. Tell our stories, tell our faith journey, tell what God has done for the nation of Israel, because that is how their faith is built. When you share your story, you build your faith, but you also build the faith of others. Here's what God says in 18, starting in verse 11. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and in your minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land of the Lord. I love you, church. Make sure you're sharing your story with someone.